Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CIFAL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the first session of the Climate Change Emergencies and Cultural Heritage Speaker Series, which is being presented in partnership with Heritage Ottawa with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Tkaronto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. The territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speakers, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. For those who may not be familiar with CIFAL York, our center was established in 2020 and started its operations in 2021. CIFAL York was created in collaboration between the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR, and York University with York Region to develop and deliver training and knowledge sharing, as well as capacity building programs across 5 focus areas, which are disaster risk, emergency management and humanitarian actions, health development, environment and climate change, entrepreneurship, digital technology and economic development, equity, diversity and inclusion, and advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator, Media Hadi. Media Hadi worked in the humanitarian sector at the UN Refugee Agency in Amman, Jordan, working with vulnerable communities in the Middle East. She later moved on to manage health, education, emergency, WASH, and food security programs in the Middle East and Africa, heavily focused on developing and implementing conflict-sensitive sustainable emergency programs locally in countries of operation. Media currently works at the Office of Emergency Management at the City of Mississauga as an emergency management specialist. Media, thank you very much for moderating today's session, and the floor is yours.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Francesco, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Media. I'll be your moderator for this first session in this session series of Global Assessment of World and National Heritage Sites to Climate Change and Extreme Events. Joining us today is our speakers, Dr. Ali Asgary and Dr. Koorosh Attarian. To give you a little bit of introduction on our speakers, Dr. Ali Asgary is an expert in disaster, emergency, and business continuity management. He has been actively involved in research, teaching, and professional activities in these fields since 1993. His research has been published in leading disaster and emergency management journals. He was among the founding faculty members who started the first university program in disaster and emergency management in Canada at Brandon University in 2003, and later on among the founding faculty members who started disaster and emergency management at York University. Dr. Asgary served as the IAEM Canada president between 2007 and 2009, and as the board member of IAEM during the same period. Since 2015, Dr. Asgary has been the executive director of York University's Advanced Disaster Emergency and Rapid Response Simulation. His research interests include post-disaster emergency, post-disaster recovery and reconstruction, business continuity and risk assessment, disaster and emergency simulations and modeling, applications of AI, VR, AR, and MR, and geomatics and disaster and emergency management, and cost-benefit analysis and decision-making under uncertainty. Dr. Asgary is also the director of CIFAL York, Canada's first CIFAL center within UNITAR CIFAL Global Network. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Asgary, and introducing as well Dr. Koorosh Attarian. Dr. Koorosh Attarian is an associate professor of architecture at the Jundishapur University of Technology and a postdoctoral fellow at York University. In 2018, Dr. Attarian became the vice chancellor of the Jundishapur Research Institute at the Jundishapur University of Technology. Dr. Attarian's research focuses on cultural history and architectural engineering. His research has been published in numerous leading journals on architecture, cultural heritage, and sustainability, and has been published in several books. Dr. Attarian is also the reviewer of several journals, including the Journal of Building Engineering, Journal of Asian Architecture and Building Engineering, and the Journal of Cultural Heritage Management and Sustainable Development, among others. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Asgary and Dr. Attarian. Following this session, I will be assisting moderating the Q&A section. So should any of our participants have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to post them in the Q&A section, and we'll be reading them through following the discussion. So thank you, and Dr. Asgary and Dr. Attarian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Media, and thank you everyone for attending this session, the first session of our speaker series on climate change, emergencies, and cultural heritage. It's a great pleasure to have you with us today to open this round of a speaker series. I'm sure you have chosen to come to this session and register for this speaker series because of your attention to this very urgent and important topic. Some of you may have been doing work and research in this area. Some of you may have particular interest in intersection between climate change and emergency management. And we are hoping to build a community of researchers, experts, interested individuals around this topic. We have started this series with a number of speakers lining up for the next few weeks in a bi-weekly manner. However, we are hoping to continue this conversation and receiving your feedback and add some more additional case studies, professional planning procedures, emergency management procedures related to climate change and emergency related to cultural heritage. This speaker series is jointly offered to you by Heritage Canada, Heritage Ottawa, and we are looking for more partners in the future as well. These are the speakers that we have so far, or speakers that have so far agreed to come and present. So as you can see, these are real experts in the field, doing professional and academic research and activities in this area, in Canada, outside Canada, from a diverse group of background and professional activities. We are hoping today's session is setting the stage basically for all these future talks, and hopefully bring more, as I said, in the future. We remain on your advice and suggestions as participants also. If you have suggestions, please let us know. We are still building this speaker series and would very much appreciate if you can let us know about your interests, particular interests, suggestions, ideas as we move on. But definitely, as you can see, we have very good speakers lined up so far, and looking forward to your active participation in this series. With that, I'm very glad to be here with my colleague and friend, Dr. Koorosh Attarian, to present to you this sort of overview of or assessment of what's happening with regard to intersection between climate change, particularly with regard to climate change related emergencies and extreme events and heritage sites, whether of different types, basically. And as I said, hoping to set the stage for our speakers in the future, in the coming weeks. Our goal is basically to provide an overview based on an application that we are developing to assist this process, because we are seeing that we are really going into a situation where no longer necessarily the adaptation mitigation may be sufficient. We need to also embed and add sort of emergency response tools, capabilities to be able to more actively respond to climate change or extreme events related to climate change that may impact largely and heavily some or most of our heritage sites and heritage in general. So that's our intention. At the same time, we are hoping to build capacity through these conversations to hopefully bring together experts of multidisciplinary experts from emergency management, from culture, and from heritage architecture, planning, et cetera, so that we can hopefully put all the capacities and forces together to make this happen. So I would like to start with the conclusion first, really, that is the fact that attention to culture and heritage in general and relationship between climate change and that has been very much highlighted in IPCC reports, including the recent one that is here in this slide. There are a lot of reference, a lot of discussions on the impacts of climate change on heritage in general and particular heritage sites in particular in this document. Throughout the document, you will see page by page, chapter by chapter, the importance of this issue, the fact that heritage sites are being extremely impacted or will be impacted over the next few decades by ongoing climate change related hazards or extreme events. And the key point here, if I can summarize all of these in 2 bullet points or 3, is basically that many of our tangible and intangible assets, properties are at risk. Some are at higher and experiencing even more accelerating pace of risk compared to others. And in fact, this is a statement from the document that climate change destroys unique natural archives and important cultural heritage sites. This is what is stated in this document. And really this means that we need to pick up and bring in resources to be able to contain this hazard or hazards, and also be able to protect our heritage in all forms and types. In other words, as a sort of conclusion that I want to draw from all this document is that really we have reached to a point where emergency phase for many heritage sites are already there. You know, if you are studying and working in disaster and emergency management field, we often divide this all into 4 phases or 5 sometimes: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. My point is that we have really reached in some cases to emergency phase, which requires its own way of handling the situation and tools, assets that are needed to handle. Although at the same time, we still continue every effort we can do with mitigation, with preparedness, etc. Now, it's needless to say that even if you go to the same document, when it goes into different regions of the world, particularly areas that are having a lot of heritage sites in the world, like the Mediterranean region, for example, that hosts Italy, Spain, and other European countries, and also countries in the southern parts of Mediterranean region with a huge amount of cultural sites, you see that it is basically expected that many of these sites will be at risk of climate-related risk. And this has been documented. This has been, in some cases, studied very well in detail how this is going to happen. And in our presentation, we try to mention some examples of that as we go. Now, the key point that I also want to add here is that the emergency or the urgency of this needs or attention has been also highlighted by the very key chapter and the working group report of this this effort that is basically focusing on how the urgency that we in the emergency management field also interprets that as emergency situation, where it basically desperately asks for help and attention to this issue, and also the fact that this is very much embedded and related to our sustainable development goals. Even though we know the current sustainable development goals as set for 2030 have not been as successful as we want up until now, almost mid period of this development goal setting. But we know that the impacts are happening anyways, regardless of what the numbers tell us about achievement in sustainable development goals. And one of the definite problems or issues that we have is, of course, related to heritage sites. And if we fall behind achieving related sustainable development goals with regard to heritage, it is going to impact us a lot as well. So the point that this urgency is turned into emergency is our focus. We want to look at it as an emergency that requires emergency procedures and attention. Now, before going into highlighting some of those emergencies or hazard that we are talking about, perhaps for those of you who are probably less familiar with World Heritage sites or numbers, I would like to highlight this recent very interesting effort by UNESCO to create this platform that shows and basically provides you with a lot of visual and interactive information about cultural and heritage sites. And this is the link is provided here. You can check it out. Provides good information about these sites, basically by type, by region, by situation in terms of danger, etc., which can provide a good basis for some of the planning and management as we move into future. In this platform, there are about 100,199 cases, some of which majority are cultural, 933, and some natural, and some mix of natural and cultural. This platform was recently launched and also by UNESCO. And also, as you can see, although heritage sites are all over the world in most countries, there are, of course, concentration of many of them in certain countries. Some of them are listed here. And if you look at the number of ongoing disaster events or emergency events around the globe, you can also see that some of these countries are those that also regularly experience emergencies. You see Italy is prone to many of the geologic and climate-related hazards. China, Spain. We have seen cases of all kinds of hazards and emergency events in all of these countries, even in recent as recent as this year, indeed. So this is a major concern. This is happening, and this is impacting people. This is impacting our infrastructure. This is impacting our societies. But these are also impacting our heritage, whether living or in this. Of course, you will see. I'm going to skip this quickly, but there are also a good number of sites from Canada listed under UNESCO World Heritage. Some of them are natural, some of them are cultural, some of them are mixed, and all again scattered across the country from west to east and south to north. There are also beyond the World Heritage site, there are also national heritage that are of importance to each country. Canada has a good large number of them as well, of different types at different provinces and territories that are again of high value, high importance for current generation, future generations, and so on, that needs to be protected, needs to be examined with regard to climate change impacts in the future. Now, why is it important? I think this is so far clear that we as human, we as generations, we as world population, we have sort of sense of belonging with culture, heritage. We feel these are values that we want to protect. These are the values that we want to protect for future generations. These are values that are of utmost important for many different reasons. But at the same time, loss of these are loss of or impacting the current generations and future generations' livelihood, life as well. So there are very different aspects of tangible and intangible heritage. In this presentation, our focus is mostly on built heritage. We just cannot focus on intangible heritage, but they are very much in danger as well. By leaving an intangible heritage, we're really looking into people who are our heritage, who are carrying our heritage over the time, and depending on where they are being heavily impacted by climate change impacts, and those are of very importance as well. So really focusing on built heritage or heritage sites does not mean that we are capturing necessarily everything. We are trying to just give examples, but there are a lot more impacts of climate change when it comes to our heritage that we should be mindful of. With that, I'm going to pass now to my colleague Koorosh to go over the next few slides, and I'll be back after his comments. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asgary, and hello to everyone. And thank you to joining us, and thank you, Dr. Asgary, to provide this opportunity. So let's continue. In general point of view, for every physical environment, such as historic environments, increasing global temperature would be the key factor for climate change impact. Having said that, this can be categorized by the number of secondary hazards on environments such as floods, landslides, extreme rainfall, and sea levels. And you can see the 11 items of this here. And many of them has similar events, may cause similar events on the historic sites or on environment. For example, floods, rising sea levels, storms can cause coastal flooding and Arctic soil erosion, changing wave action, and coastal erosion. So every one of them can do something with an environment, and when it goes to the heritage environment, that would be different, or maybe become severe. So in the next slide, you can, yes. We can, if we want to categorize the climate change impact on heritage, we can say that a number of these impacts cause a gradual change and slow change on historic environments or historic sites. Here we have 3 examples of this type of change on cultural heritage. There are lots of more, but we don't have time to talk about many of them. So one of the gradual impacts is biological degradation. Changes in humidity may be caused by flood or rising sea level, or changing in precipitation that leads influence and growth of microorganisms on stone and wooden heritage materials. Longest period of wetness increase related to humidity and also moisture within materials, and together with rising temperature create conditions for favorable to various biological activity. And the other one has a permafrost thawing, for example, in Dawson City, subsidence of building foundation caused by the melting the ice wedged under the foundation of the building, and it caused the stabilization of heritage resources, and many of heritage resources anchored in the permafrost in micro and macro level decays and macro level. And for example, this causes maybe corrosion. And in other example, for example, for erosion, we can say in the Abbott Pass Hut, it's the average of annual temperature. It's the would be increased about 1.4 Celsius since the mid 20th century. Precipitation, sorry, by over 6%, because it increases for 6%, and because of the erosion under the foundation of plan, there have 2 planned for destruct the building and make it in the museum, and maybe work on it to improve the structure, but they can't do that because it's because of the erosion. They can't do anything on these structures. And in the next slide, thank you. And the next slide, there are extreme events, and many of the climate change events can have extreme events and maybe rapid impacts on cultural heritage, and catastrophic change in natural and physical environment resulting from climate change, such as flooding, landslides, wildfire, can have rapid and great impacts on historic places. You can see in the Highwood, in the left image, in the you can see that it's the building and it's flooding. The flood may cause rapidly loss of historic structures, and also drastically increase the moisture in historic materials and structures, causing physical, chemical, and biological degradation. And wildfire, which we can discuss it more in this session, may obviously cause mechanical and structural degradation of materials, and also this situation become worse in the permafrost regions, because it causes increasing thawing of underground ice wedge. And also the landslide damage may cause slope instability, and for example, the more extreme rainfalls and under climate change will increase the risk of erosion or maybe landslide that may cause a rapid damage in the structure and loss of the cultural sites in a moment. Thank you, Dr. Asgary.
Thank you. So as you notice, there are examples of already happening of these situations. I'm going to very briefly go over some of the larger context or view of what these type of extreme events are and how they impact or their relationship with existing heritage sites. And each of them, as you will see, require special attention and probably special focus. Generally speaking, the trend is we are experiencing an increasing in terms of numbers and intensity of extreme events related to climate change, some of which are listed here, and these are scattered across the globe. And examples are here. We in the next few slides we have overlaid basically very simply the existing World Heritage over the heritage sites, over the main hazards, extreme or weather related hazard that we listed there that are experiencing increasing trend. Here you can see that, for example, how it looks like with regard to drought. Drought is one of those, gradual situations, but it has its own impact on heritage, directly and indirectly, mentioned by Koorosh about some of those processes. But it can also impact indirectly through the fact that populations is being impacted by this, and then it impacts the way we protect, the way we are able to conserve all these heritage sites. Same with temperature. Globally, you can see there is, of course, an increasing trend on global temperature. And as this temperature goes on, you see that more and more heritage sites are being or falling within those limits of or their limits of temperature. This may happen over the time, but basically some of these are already on the extremes, but as we will experience more and more increase in temperature, we will observe many more of these would be highly impacted. And again, increasing temperature has a lot of consequences for natural and cultural or built heritage sites, depending on where they are and depending on what materials they have or what type of animals or vegetations are there. And these are also part of the studies that are being conducted, and we can certainly get detailed information from how they impact different sites as well. Now, similarly, flood is one of those under-rise events, as we have experienced this year, a large number of them in different countries, in China, in Brazil, in Europe, in Africa, etc. And this is just is too many, and also this is just a riverian flooding that you can see. It's hard to focus on the global view, but when you zoom into specific parts of the world, this is, for example, in Europe, you will see that there are a lot of our heritage sites are very close or within these flood boundaries. And if we assume or depending on the models that we use, there is an increase in flooding and extent of flood. So there would be more of our heritage site being impacted in the future by flooding. This is a slide or data overlaying heritage sites by geologic hazard landslide. And this is, of course, mostly in mountainous areas. And again, many of our cultural heritage or heritage sites are within those areas, especially if they are buildings, structures, they are going to be impacted by landslides. And again, we may not see a geologic landslide or triggered by for example earthquake as related to climate change, but those that are triggered by storms and rain, they are parts of those that can be of concern, especially with regard to climate change impacts. And again, just want to highlight how what is the situation right now. We have the numbers in the app that I will show you quickly. And with regard to also tropical storms, you see again, not many, but a significant number of our heritage sites, World Heritage Sites, are within high impact or high frequency tropical storm. This map actually doesn't cover the Mediterranean storms that we observed this year, causing a lot of damage in many countries, including Libya, etc. So again, if climate change is causing increasing intensity and frequency of tropical storms, then again we will have more and more of our heritage sites being or falling into high impact zones. This is for wildfire. I think everyone has experienced this summer or has seen news and impacts of wildfire across the globe, in North America, in South America, in Europe, in Africa partially, and so on. So this is again an increasing trend in their number, and many of our sites, as you can observe here, are basically on the red areas. These are areas in the globe that are have high potential for wildfire emergencies. And again, if there is an increase because of climate change in this hazard, we are in trouble, especially for our protecting our heritage sites. This is in a situation in Canada. Coastal risk is also important. I think many have seen issues related to sea level rise that, of course, damages sites, but also creates other, as mentioned by Koorosh, a lot of other consequences for the situation that we are having. This map basically shows from a study where are the extreme sea level rise situations by 2100, which again, at least for those sites that are within the coastal zones, this is going to be very important. And as you well know, many of our big cities, major cities, hosting many of our cultural heritage sites are within the coastal areas, basically, and this is of a major concern as well. This is for Arctic and permafrost that Koorosh also mentioned as a case, an example of that. This is for the Canadian part. As again, you can see there are a good number of our national sites that are falling or exist within these areas, and they may disappear if this trend continues and we because of climate change. And even those areas that are currently, stable, they may influence or be influenced by that. All right, back to you, Koorosh.
Well, as an example of extreme events on heritage sites, you can monitor wildfire on the Canadian heritage, national and World Heritage landscapes. So in here, we choose 3 of them: Hay River and Cultural Heritage Site, and also Alela Cross which experienced recently large damage of protected areas, and Wood Buffalo National Park, which is the one of the natural World Heritage Sites. And in the next slide, we can see that the map of yes, the map of the current. Sorry. Yes, it's the map of the current wildfire in the Canada, and it's if you can see, that's the blue color is the low danger, and the red one is in extreme danger, and the orange one is in the very high danger. So if you focus on the map, you can see that the many part of the Canada, it's a current map, and if it's not, it's a history map, it would be, we can see that it's a large area of the Canada would be in the high danger, maybe in here, in this time, or maybe in the future, or in May or June. You know, if we, in particular, yes, thank you. Another example, we can see here that the Hay River in the lower part of the map, you can, and Fort Resolution is located in extreme danger with the current wildfire map in this map. So in reality, due to catastrophic situation that the wildfire caused to these towns' residents and the stressful situation for the evacuation, others and use safeguarding cultural heritage steps back on such areas. And the many similar cases, priority is to save life and infrastructures, and nothing can be done on the heritage and historic environments. For in most cases, in addition, Hay River experienced a stressful situation in these years, during these years, for 2 evacuation alerts and a flood even in last year. And in the upper side of the map, you can see that there's 3 World Heritage Sites located in extreme to very high danger zone, which 2 of them are World Natural Heritage Sites. And this event may change the historic and heritage characteristics of such region. We can say that although the specific place, like writing on a stone at the bottom of the map, might be safe, might be in the safe location, but the environment context that originated the foundation of this heritage site is deteriorating. And in the right side, we can have Allée La Crosse, which is indigenous protected and conserved area community pronounced by IPCA, and the greater region is called Satwatik, I think, and this place is the house of 300 species of plant. And right now it's in the green color, but recently half of its protected area lost in the wildfire. In the next slide, in the Nova Scotia, the sea level rose about, if you, now we change if we want to change from the another extreme climate change impact, from wildfire to floods, and we can have many of these examples. For if we want to monitor the flood events, as Dr. Asgary mentioned in many slides before, in general, in Nova Scotia, the sea level rose about the 13th centimeter in 20th century. Due to the rise of the sea level and subsidence and sinking land surfaces. And as you may see in the maps, we overlap the flood hazard map and historical district of the Lunenburg town. The map shows that all historic seascape of the town is in danger for flooding event. And in this map shows the simulation of the area that flood and surge will cover the historic shoreline, the town, in the whole town, and and the main infrastructures of the city. And the bottom right map, it's like a historical map. You can see that if it's floods in the flood events, City Hall, main buildings will cover with the flood, and the historic sites will be in the second, second emergency. So it would be very hard to save these types of historic places. In the next slide, we mapped the flood from 1740 to 2021. It's a historical map, but we put some images of this map for representation. So this map shows the history of the flood, events categorized by origins of the flood, such as freshet, which caused by snow, rainfall, and ice melting, heavy rain, and coastal storm, and so on. In the first map, we can see that from 1695 to 1740, there are very few flood events in the Canada region. And also from 1740 to 1840, it's about 200 years. And besides, many of historic structures of Canada had been built and was building during this period. And we can say that there are not still very significant number of floods throughout the country in that age. And in the central, in the maps in the center, from 1840 to 1940, at the beginning of the World War II, we can see that the flood event happened in the wide region, central New Brunswick and Nova Scotia province, and from 1940 to 1919, it shows that flood event is significantly occurred in the ocean shorelines and sparingly in central region. But the last 30 years, we can see that the flood occurs widely in central region, mostly near the riversides and even in central lakes of the Canada. I want to pay your attention to Nova Scotia and New Brunswick at the top right of this map. We've experienced the flood events continuously for 300 years. And here we can see that the 4 World Heritage sites located in this region. Due to this map, we can see that the southern part of the map, like where Lunenburg and landscape of Grand Pre and Jorgens Fossil Cliffs located, experienced coastal storm, and northern part, particularly National Heritage Site, they experience heavy rainfall the most. And we can have an analyze in the future studies on them. In the next slide, for erosion, the impact of erosion and as a gradual climate change impact on historic site, and which caused by permafrost thaw. And we choose York Factory and Herschel Island, and we can say that decrease of the sea ice leads a higher exposure of coastal areas to storms, and the Herschel Island is being slow in the left, is being washed away by rising the sea. You can see the layers of the river, level of the island bank, which lowers from 1920 to 2005, and they had to remove and relocate the building 2 times from the to save the structures and save the foundation of this heritage historic monuments, to save them. And now in the York Factory, it is estimated much of York Factory buildings and its cemetery in the right, you can see in the right image, will be lost in 100 or 150 years, in the coming 100 years. So if you can see, that's the deck and all in the, yes, it's a 1923 image, and the other one is 2005, and you can see the whole place and the whole deck, and about 4 of this York Factory, and the oldest parts of the York Factory washed away or damaged by the erosion because of the permafrost thaw of the river bank, river of Hay River and Hudson Bay's, coastline, permafrost thawing. So in the next slide, we map this permafrost. We have the 5th edition of the permafrost map, and we can see the York Factory, and the community and the government told that the rate of the erosion has been about 3 meters per 5 years, and we have lost this factory in the coming years. And the other place in the Hershey Island, you can see that there are different places, but the same. They have the same condition and situation regarding the thawing, the permafrost under the structures and under the historic monuments. And in many central and in the yellow color, and you can see that it's the temperature is rising, and many of the places, historic places under the located in these places would experience melting the ice wedges under structures, and this may cause structural instability for the historic places. And large number of historic places, as you can see, are located in this map and in this region. Thank you. Dr. Asgary.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are really short of time, so I'm going to make a conclusion in a 1 minute or so that we provide some time for our participants to have their questions in case they have. So basically, having said all these things, we thought this is now time to bring all this together and create an application or platform where we can examine and monitor this situation and provide an asset or tool for those who are involved in this process so that they can better do a situational assessment for ongoing hazards as well as prediction of what is going to happen. So we are basically bringing together the data that exists on the cloud through an application using ArcGIS online and make it available through to users as an app. We create and work on the base data or layers that are heritage sites, but most of the other data comes initially from the existing sources from legitimate organizations that are providing these services or this map services or data services on the cloud. Here is an overall view of the current applications that we are developing. Basically, you have all the sites. We are using existing data to classify them in terms of how much in risk they are based on the historical data, but also provide the layers that are available through, as I said, different web services with regard to temperature, with regard to landslide, with regard to flooding, with regard to wildfire, earthquake, etc., so that you can monitor the situation. You can even use some of these tools to assess how many, for example, of these sites are going to be impacted by a particular event, if you know the direction of the event or the extent of the event, etc., for the current rapid decision making as well as future. We develop different versions of this application so that people with different needs can use and benefit from it. The previous app is heavily using some of the existing analytical tools, but this one is using mostly widgets and tools that is mostly relevant to those who want to just view and examine the situation based on the layers from different hazards that they can choose. I'm mindful of the time, so I'm not going to demo the app itself, but this was basically a general perspective of what we are doing. And sorry for going media for going beyond our scheduled time, and I hope we didn't take too much of our participants' question period. Back to you, and we are happy to take questions if there are.
Perfect. No worries at all, Dr. Asgary. Thank you very much for this amazing session. I am looking at the Q&A section, and I don't see any questions rolling in, but maybe, oh, I see one in the chat. Okay, so this question is, in what ways do planning can be used as mitigating tool to shield tangible heritage site against the harsh climate change impacts?
All right, thank you very much for the question. I think that is an important question, and this is what many of our colleagues are currently doing as part of the mitigation and planning purposes, focusing on long-term remediation and actions that can be taken. There are very good practices currently available that that planners can benefit from. They are in the document that I showed you from ECOMOS. There are some of the very interesting adaptation measures that can be taken. And it is really important as we focus on some of these immediate extreme event impacts, we should not forget that this has to be an ongoing planning process. Planners need to just adapt their current procedures and planning measures to the potential consequences of, you know, short-term, long-term consequences of climate change on this on environment in general, built environment, but in these sites in particular, there needs to be changes, of course, in many different fronts. And the good thing is that we do have some of those recommendations already on, but it is really important to implement them. I hope I have answered briefly your question, but if Dr. Attarian, you have any additional answer, please go ahead.
No, thank you. That was enough for that. I think that was, thank you. It was a comprehensive answer. But I think that in Canada, we have some management plan for every cultural heritage sites, and there should be some, we should wait to see how it goes, and could they stop or mitigate or adapt with the climate change impacts or not.
All right, well, thank you very much for the responses. Are there any questions? All right, so there's another question that mentions, can you share the name of the application?
Absolutely. We have not yet released the application, but it will be released within the next few weeks as we are engaged in this speaker series. And we will let you know, all the participants in this series, that when it is becoming available. But the name is Climate Change Emergency for Heritage Response or Support Response Support application.
Perfect. And I think we have time maybe for one more question. How are you going to monitor heritage changes during time?
Well, this is a good question. It is really difficult to monitor these sites individually unless data is shared and provided. I mean, I'm talking from perspective of this application and this monitoring system. If this information is provided somehow by the host agencies or agencies that take care of these sites, this is definitely an addition. But currently, we are using all the data that is available through, for example, satellite imagery data provided by government agencies about climate, about flooding, about landslide, water issues, etc. Whatever exists there, but these are not at the necessarily resolution detail enough so that you can monitor individual, very fine resolution in the individual ones. But I think that is important to notice here. But for those who are managing larger scale impacts of emergencies on these sites, this type of assessment would be really helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asgary. And with that, I would like to thank you and Dr. Attarian for the informative presentation, and for our participants for joining us this afternoon. It's been a pleasure to moderate the first session for this wonderful series. Speaker Series is a great platform to share knowledge and experiences from many field professionals related to climate change impacts on cultural heritage. We hope you're able to join us for all the upcoming sessions in this series. And with that, I now hand it back to you, Dr. Asgary, for the closing remarks.
Thank you very much. There was a point about sharing the information. All our speaker series, depending on the approval of the speakers, will be posted on online on the site website, or speaker series website. You're welcome to watch them and share them in about 1 or 2 hours after the presentation. And this one certainly we will share it as soon as possible. And yeah, looking forward to our brilliant speakers in 2 weeks' time, and brilliant, of course, participants to join us for that. Those are really interesting. Don't miss them. And thank you, Media, for nicely moderating this session. And I know you are also very busy with your own work, and I hope to have you in future sessions as well. And thank you, Francesco, for organizing and supporting this session as well.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all participants. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and looking forward to see you in 2 weeks.